Okay, so what I wanted to show you is recapping what we talked about earlier, and then it will make a little bit more sense on why I have you do some of the exercises we're doing. All right, so right now, I've basically only taken the upper trap off. Upper trap is what I think you're feeling more resistance from. I don't particularly feel like it's a muscle restriction because, like you were saying, you don't get a stretch feeling. You don't feel like you can get to a point where you're like, oh man, that's definitely stretching that really tight muscle, but you feel tension there all the time. So let's take this off and let's go down just to skeleton a second and take a look at anatomy days here. So if you remember from anatomy days, upper trap attaches to your spinous process here, right? As opposed to out on the side on your transverse process. So if your upper trap attaches on these spinous processes, when I'm looking at you rotating left versus right, when you are rotating your head to the left and you're looking left, it's turning these guys to the left as well, but it moves your spinous process to the right, okay? So a good way to visualize that is if you're holding a pen, and I'll show you this also, but you're just holding it between your thumb and your first finger, kind of replicating it. When you turn it left, you can see how your spinous process moves to the right, but I'll show you that. So when you are looking at what's restricting what, if I go and I add the muscles back on, when your upper trap attaches out here to that spinous process, like I was saying, when you rotate left, when you rotate left, this is moving to the right, which puts your upper trap on a stretch, right? Because it's moving this way, and this is anchored down here, so all of this gets a stretch sensation when you are rotating left when the upper trap is what's restricting you. So I want to clear all that off. Let's look at the nerve that's up in here. Your spinal accessory nerve, okay? So it's this guy that runs right along where you get pain. It is actually what innervates your upper trap, so that's what lets your upper trap have movement, supplies everything, but it also lives right up here on that top corner of your shoulder blade where you get pain, right? So the thing that I want you to know about the spinal accessory nerve, and you don't have to memorize all this, just giving you an overview here. If we go and we take off the muscles and we see where it stems from, it stems way up here, like I was showing you. That is your cranial nerve 11, okay? So it's actually a cranial nerve, which makes it a little bit different than some of the other ones. But the interesting part is that if we look back in the mouth at cranial nerve 12, which is incredibly close to cranial nerve 11, that goes to your tongue. So let's take your skeleton off there. So if you can see where this is still coming out, cranial nerve 12 goes here. Cranial nerve 11 goes here. They're right next to each other. So if they're really irritable, they can essentially kind of send a mixed signal and it goes to your tongue instead. So that's kind of the overview of what they think is happening in that whole head-tongue deal. We'll add your skeleton back on. So what I'm going to have you do is actually some nerve glides as opposed to stretching. Because the nerve is what sends that signal of, hey, we feel tense, we feel all this tension, whatever. So I'm going to show you a couple nerve glides for this spinal accessory nerve over here. And then that stretch that I showed you earlier where you're rotating your upper cervical, sorry, that's my dog, chill, is also going to open up some space and help that move a little bit better. Other thing I want to point out to you is that power lifters, big sports guys, you guys develop the pretty muscles, okay? Because you need them for power. But if we put these on and you go back to anatomy days again, pec minor attaches to the front of your shoulder blade, okay? When your shoulder blade tips forward too much, it puts a little bit of pre-tension on the muscles that attach to it in the back, okay? So if we add on your big pec, Clearly, people who play football and are muscly, they work on pec. So let's take the big one back off so you can see shoulder blade. Pec minor attaches to your shoulder blade, which can make your shoulder blade actually tip forward more than it should. When it tips forward more than it should, then everything kind of in this little realm gets a little bit funky because it's sitting differently than it normally does. So when you're going, you're looking and you're reaching overhead, whatever, there's a different pull because there's more forward rotation of your shoulder blade. So some of the stuff I'm going to have you do is going to work on helping tip those backwards. So I'll bring you that ball that I was telling you about, or if you've got a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball or something, but you're going to be working on releasing your pec minor. I'm going to give you some exercises that work on tipping your shoulder blade back a little bit, and then we're going to work on some nerve glides and see if that can't help clear some of that up. Hope that makes sense. Hope that was helpful.